"I'm so sorry, ma'am," Emily stammered, nearly dropping the silver tray as the crystal glasses trembled in her hands. The dining room of the Lexington Grand fell silent for a heartbeat. Soft jazz still played, but every clink, every whisper, felt suddenly amplified. Across from her, the sharply dressed man at table 7 looked up from his phone with a flicker of annoyance. His mother, seated beside him, offered a kind smile, though her eyes didn't quite meet Emily's. The young waitress steadied herself, forcing a breath. She'd only been working here for 2 weeks, and already her nerves threatened to undo her. But something about the older woman's calm expression stopped her. The way her gaze followed Emily's lips, the faint tilt of her head, as if reading rather than hearing. Then Emily saw it, a tiny hearing aid tucked behind her ear. The man, Ethan Cross, billionaire investor and the hotel's most intimidating guest, leaned toward his mother, repeating Emily's question more slowly. The gesture was careful, practiced, protective. Emily froze, her heart tugging in recognition. Before she could stop herself, she set the tray down and began to sign. "Would you like still or sparkling water?" Ethan blinked, his hand pausing midair. His mother's eyes widened, then softened, glistening with sudden emotion. For a moment, the bustling restaurant seemed to fade. She raised her hands, trembling slightly, and signed back. "You know sign language?" Emily nodded, her smile shy but sure. The older woman laughed quietly, her joy as delicate as the chandelier light spilling over them. Ethan sat back, watching, unsure whether to speak or just listen. His mother, Grace Cross, was radiant. She hadn't looked this alive in years. For so long, every public outing had been a test, patient smiles, awkward exchanges, polite pity. But now, she was laughing with someone who didn't see her as broken. As Emily poured the water, the conversation between her and Grace unfolded entirely in sign, fluid, expressive, effortless. Grace asked where she had learned. Emily told her about her younger brother, born deaf, who taught her that silence could be beautiful. Ethan listened, the edges of his usual reserve softening. By dessert, his mother's laughter had drawn the attention of other diners. Ethan didn't care. For the first time in years, he saw the woman who had raised him. Not the quiet shadow he tried so hard to protect, but the vibrant spirit she'd once been. When the check arrived, Ethan reached for his wallet but hesitated. Instead, he looked at Emily. "Would you mind staying for a minute?" he asked quietly. She blinked, unsure. "Of course, sir." He turned to his mother. "You really like her, don't you?" Grace smiled, her hands moving again. "She understands the language of kindness." That's rare. Something in those words stayed with him. A week later, Emily was called into the manager's office, expecting to be scolded. Instead, Ethan was there, waiting. He wasn't holding a complaint form, but an offer. A full scholarship to finish college. A recommendation letter. And a simple note in his mother's handwriting. "Thank you for hearing me," without words. That day, Emily walked out of the Lexington Grand not just with hope, but with proof that even the smallest gesture, a few silent signs, could change lives louder than any words ever could. Emily didn't just serve, she connected. Her hands moved with a quiet fluency that drew everyone's attention, signing every question, every choice, every small kindness between the courses. Grace Cross, seated beneath the warm glow of the chandelier, watched with eyes that began to shimmer the way they hadn't in years. She laughed, an unguarded, genuine laugh, and the sound turned heads across the dining room. Soon, whispers rippled through the Lexington Grand. The billionaire's mother, who was known for her reserved silence, was chatting animatedly with a waitress. And Ethan Cross, who rarely smiled at anything that didn't come with a profit margin, was simply watching, his phone forgotten, his expression softening with something unfamiliar, peace. For Emily, though, it wasn't just kindness. It was memory. Each sign carried weight, the gentle flick of her fingers, the precise movement of her wrists, all born from the hours she'd spent speaking this silent language with her little brother, Eli. He had been her world, her reason to learn patience and gentleness. He had passed away 2 years ago, leaving behind an ache so deep it had reshaped her quiet. But now, across that white linen table, it felt like she was talking to him again, one last time through someone else's eyes. When the meal ended, Grace reached out, her hands trembling as she took Emily's in her own. Her eyes glistened as she signed, You made me feel seen. You reminded me I still belong. Emily swallowed hard, her vision blurring. You reminded me that love never disappears, she signed back. The air seemed to still around them, charged with something sacred, two hearts meeting in perfect, wordless understanding. After Grace was escorted upstairs, Ethan asked to speak with Emily privately. She followed him into the quiet of the marble hallway, bracing herself for a reprimand. Maybe she'd overstepped. Maybe signing with a guest was against policy. But when he spoke, his tone wasn't cold or distant. My mother hasn't smiled like that in years, he said quietly. Not since my father passed. He paused, looking down for a moment before meeting her eyes again. People talk about empathy like it's a weakness in business. But today, I saw what real strength looks like. Emily didn't know what to say, so she didn't. She just nodded, hands clasped nervously in front of her apron. Ethan asked her about her life, not out of politeness, but with genuine curiosity. When she told him about Eli and how she'd learned sign language to help him navigate a world that didn't always make room for him, Ethan was silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "My mother taught me that compassion builds bridges. I forgot that somewhere along the way." A few days later, the hotel manager called Emily into the office again. Ethan was there, holding a thin folder and a faint smile. Inside was a scholarship offer, full tuition for a degree in special education. Attached to it was a memo from Ethan's desk, announcing a new initiative. Every Lexington Grand employee would receive free sign language training, sponsored in memory of Eli Carter. Emily stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. She had never asked for anything, not recognition, not reward, but somehow, her brother's love had found a way to ripple outward, touching lives she'd never imagined. The story didn't stay quiet for long. Guests who had witnessed the exchange shared it online. A billionaire's mother moved to tears by a waitress's compassion. Within days, it became a symbol of grace and humanity, proof that kindness could still make headlines without needing tragedy or spectacle. Grace began visiting the hotel more often after that. She always asked for Emily. Their conversations flowed silently, beautifully, two friends speaking in a language that transcended sound. Ethan often joined them, just listening, humbled by how much he still had to learn about connection. Weeks later, during a quiet afternoon shift, Emily stood by the window overlooking the city skyline. The sun filtered through the glass, warm and golden, the way Eli used to describe sunlight with his hands, like hope you could hold. She smiled softly and whispered a thank you, not to anyone in particular, but to the universe for giving her a reason to keep believing. Sometimes the world tried to drown out gentleness. But in moments like that, Emily knew love always finds its way back, through strangers, through silence, through the unspoken kindness that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories, because the world could always use another reminder that even the quietest compassion can speak louder than words. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you have done what Emily did?